August 24th, 2003, Hudson County. It was New Jersey's annual Dominican Day Parade. From a rooftop, Detective Davis Valdivia videotaped the crowd, on the lookout for gang violence.
I was up there for several hours. I would say probably 6 hours on that roof.
Little did he know that the bloodthirsty Dominican street gang, the Trinitarios, was out for revenge. 4 months earlier, a 60th Street gang member had stabbed a New Jersey Trinitario. The victim recovered, but the Trinitarios had yet to settle the score. An unacceptable situation for their New York brothers.
They were upset that one of their members was stabbed and nothing was done about it.
If someone messes with one of their members and it goes unpunished, they will essentially be viewed as chumps.
The New York Trinitarios were hell-bent on revenge and planned to get it on their opponent's own turf. They strategized their attack at a local schoolyard late that afternoon. At the suggestion of a New York leader, they traded their traditional machetes for screwdrivers.
It was easy at the moment because the guy from Brooklyn was like, "Oh no, we're not going to carry none of that. What if we get stopped by the cop? They see us with screwdrivers in the car. They're not going to bother us with that."
They sharpened the tips for good measure.
They armed themselves with those screwdrivers, ripped clothing apart that were rags in the trunk of the car, and wrapped it around the handle. If there's cloth on the handle, your hand won't slip when you stab someone with it, and you're never going to leave fingerprints.
The gang was prepared for cold-blooded murder.
You can't really slice anybody with a screwdriver. I mean, it's only one purpose is to jab and puncture.
2 carloads of Trinitarios headed straight for the heart of the 60th Street Boys territory in West New York. They found what they were looking for at the corner gas station at 60th Street and Broadway. The Trinitarios confronted 21-year-old Jameer Brown, who was an associate of the gang.
Once they approached him, they asked for an individual by the name of Munchi. That's the same individual that had words with them during the parade.
Munchi was nowhere in sight, but Brown stood up for his friend to the bloodthirsty mob.
He responds to them saying he's not here, and if you have a problem with him, you have a problem with me.
The Trinitarios pulled out their screwdrivers.
Someone ran up to him and stabbed him. And then they were all over him, stabbing him.
Brown went down instantly. One of his friends, a 16-year-old, tried to break up the assault.
One individual of the 60th Street Boys actually went to his aid, and he wound up getting stabbed in the forearm.
Jameer's friend was able to escape and ran to alert police. He suffered a severe stab wound and would later need 19 stitches, but he survived the attack. Jameer Brown was not so lucky. The screwdrivers had ripped through a crucial artery.
The Trinitarios scattered, leaving Jameer Brown essentially dying on the street.
Brown died at a local hospital 90 minutes later. Trinitario Alex Colon. He showed Colon surveillance video of the parade.
He sat there, viewed the videotape, and I recall him pointing to the individuals that I zoomed in on. He would say, "That's so one of them, and that's so-and-so. He was there, and he was in the car," and he just went on and on.
On November 25th, 2003, police in New York City and Hudson County made 5 more arrests. A 6th suspect was arrested a few weeks later. 2 more were in custody by March 2004.
The charges included murder, aggravated assault, and unlawful possession of weapon.
Among those charged were 2 alleged high-ranking Trinitario leaders, 22-year-old Ricardo Osorio of New York and 21-year-old Pablo Molina of New Jersey. The prosecution's case was coming together.
I counted about 56 witnesses that were possibly going to testify if needed.
Prosecutors also had a star witness. Alex Colon, the gangster who identified suspects on the parade videotape, was in jail facing a murder charge. He was cooperating with the prosecution against the Trinitarios in the hopes of receiving a reduced sentence.
Colon gave us a nice big picture. He could point to all the parties.
But Colon would never make it to the stand.
Our case seemed as if it would fall apart.
Hudson County, New Jersey, 2004. Police there were carefully building a case against the Trinitarios, who had repeatedly stabbed and killed 21-year-old Jameer Brown.
Screwdrivers, a lot of which were described as scary and old and rusty. It was a pretty brutal attack.
8 defendants were set to stand trial. One of them, 23-year-old Alex Colon, was cooperating with police.
He provided quite a bit of information.
The case looked solid until January 2005.
Colon was killed by a fellow inmate in jail.
No one could prove the Trinitarios had murdered Colon to keep his mouth shut. And the prosecution was now in big trouble. Their star witness was dead, and other witnesses were terrified they might be next.
They wouldn't speak to us.
The state was now scrambling to rebuild its case.
So we had to start putting a whole different case together. And now this was now a patchwork of witnesses.
January 5th, 2006. The first Trinitario defendant, one of the alleged New York leaders, Ricardo Osorio, went on trial. 18 days later, the jury convicted him of conspiracy to commit homicide. In May, the second defendant, Ramon Almonte, also went on trial. This time, Detective Davis Valdivia, who had taped the Dominican Day Parade where the fight began, took the stand as an expert witness.
I was able to show motive. I was able to show why they would respond the way they did.
Almonte was also found guilty of conspiracy to commit homicide.